Good morning and welcome to Kitty Talks. We share inspirational life stories that empower you to create yours. And today I have with me a powerhouse. He's the co-founder of Mindvalley, an angel investor, Ajit Nawalkha. Did I say that right?
You're absolutely right.
Oh,
Perfect.
well. Oh, yeah, I know. Phew. Thank goodness. Well, thank you so much. And you're all the way in Phuket in Thailand, aren't you?
I am. We're traveling. We're at a retreat center called Phuket Cleanse. We're doing a cleanse after our amazing travels across Europe.
And you've been traveling for quite a while. You're just telling me some of the countries. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, we always in the past 1 year we've just decided to just enjoy our life and play and just travel around. So for the past year or so, I gave up my house and gave up my car and everything and just like packed my life in a suitcase and we've been just traveling around. So yep, right now we are in Thailand. Before that, we were in different parts of Europe, Americas, all that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so excited to speak to you because I think, we were just talking before and our philosophies on life are really aligned. Like you're just saying that you're playing, and that's kind of what I think life should be for us. We should be able to create a life that's in alignment with our soul, where we can give back and we play. So yes, very excited to hear and speak to you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So do you mind sharing with our audience a little bit more about what you're currently doing in the world?
So currently, I'm co-founder of a company called Mindvalley. We are in the space of personal transformation, personal excellence. Our aim, our goal is to help humanity be pushed forward in the positive direction. So we work on ideas that might help human beings live a more excellent life, more fulfilled life, more joyous life in any aspect of their life, be it health, be it wellness, be it their personal selves, be their work, be their relationships, be their spirituality, whatever that may be. So that's really the core of what we do. Apart from that, I focus on a particular area of the company, which is what we call Evercoach, which is evercoach.com. And that mostly focuses on enabling coaches to push the same motive further, which is basically to help other people become more excellent. We realized that at one stage when we were building the business is that we can only reach those many people because after a point, it's harder as just a company to reach more people and really help them really awaken and really show up in the world in a different way and be able to live a fulfilled life for themselves. So we said, what if we empowered other people? What if we empowered the coaches? And what if we supported them through learnings that we have found in our lives, not influencing them in the sense of that they need to copy what we do, but kind of giving them the tools and techniques and methodologies that will allow them to really expand on what they are doing and really help create a better future for the humankind. So that's really what my focus area is right now, is Evercoach, and where we are supporting different coaches. But as a company, that's what we're focused on.
Beautiful. And that's what I really liked about the philosophy of Evercoach is you're getting entrepreneurs not only to build lives that kind of work for them, but very much giving back as well to the earth and to the planet.
Yeah, that's our focus. I mean, the way we approach it is that if we can, I mean, change comes through many different ways. One of the big ways change can come is through the right kind of education. And so what we say is if we can find facilitators of that message across the world and say, hey, listen, we know you want to live epic lives. But at the same point in time, if you become a coach, a teacher, an educator, if you're doing a podcast like you are doing, Kitty, mm-hmm. you're going beyond the money. Because a lot of times this is, yes, there is revenue involved in it. And yes, there is all those things that are involved in it. But at the same point of time, it is tremendous amount of fulfillment that you get when you contribute back to somebody else's life, when you contribute and you get to share what you've learned, what you experienced with somebody else. When you're able to coach somebody through a different experience and say, oh, wow, that was amazing. And being able to provide that breakthrough or be a facilitator of that breakthrough is really, really empowering and is really joyful and fulfilling. So it's not only about creating wealth, but being able to actually support people and saying, we know you are in this business to impact people in a positive direction. What can we support you with? So you can do that more easily, more comfortably, so you can get the right kind of education. You see, what had happened is internet has a good and a negative side, right? The good side is that you have access to so much information. Like you can get, like if you want to know something, you can just Google it, you can YouTube it, you can Facebook it. You will find things that you don't even know in your Facebook stream, and you'll learn about new ideas all the time. But the bad thing about it is really low filter in that process, right? There's a lot of information, but there's a lot of really bad information in that big set of information. Like 70-80% of information is just bad information, is by people who are not qualified, or even if they're qualified, they're not putting in that kind of effort that if they would put, it would truly bring the transformation. So as a company that has built uh, products with many different speakers, authors, well known and not so well known until we started working with them. After creating those many products, services, and really being able to deliver hundreds of thousands of customers in our ecosystem, we said, if we feel that there is wrong education happening for educators, it is our responsibility to create something that can help them have the right kind of information or right kind of direction. And then, of course, they make the choice if they want to participate or not. But at least we as a company have a certain level of responsibility to go, hey, listen, we influence like more than 1 million lives every year. And so we are like, if we are influencing so many people every single year, why wouldn't we enable other educators to really be able to influence the segment of lives or number of people that they want to influence? So that's where the whole thought of Evercoach comes from. It's it's somebody put it really beautifully. It's a friend of ours, and he puts it, and I think he's even writing a book about it now. But he put it beautifully. Don't do business. I might be paraphrasing, so excuse me on that. But it was something to the line of saying, it's not only about doing business; it's about doing business to create a movement.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing him now, but it's more about that you do the business, yes, but what you're really doing is creating a movement towards the positive direction that you want to create. And that's really the intent that we come from, is to say, okay, what is it that we are moving towards? What's the direction? That is the movement that we are creating. And yes, it pays the bill and takes care of all the desires that we might have personally and our employees might have, our partners might have. Yes, we want to take care of that too. But where we want to come from is a place of saying, okay, what is the positive impact that we are creating for the society at large? And what's our contribution back to the society? And yes, it fulfills all our desires in the process, and that's great.
Beautiful. And I'd love for you to share your experience, because obviously I've now done 60 of these interviews where I've interviewed thought leaders, and all the thought leaders that I'm interviewing have broken out of the traditional system. And as you said, they're doing things which are fulfillment is their first factor. And what I've seen, and I'd love to see, I'd love to understand your experience of this, is where we do that and it's not necessarily logical. Like it's the same with this podcast. It's not necessarily, it's not the money that is driving me. It's the impact that is driving me. And what I've seen when I've interviewed these thought leaders is where they do that and it's not necessarily logical. They're out their heads, they're in their hearts. Amazing things start to happen. Like the synchronicities that come into your life. It's almost like when we get onto this path that's in alignment with our soul, the universe has got our back as such.
Yeah. No, that's true. I also, so my background, I come from India. I was born in India. I was born into a family of 22 other people. So we lived in a house with 2 people sharing the same house. Yeah. So there was nothing like privacy or space. Abundance wasn't really a thing. So I come from a background which is a very, you can say it was challenging. It's not extraordinary in context of India. There are a lot of people in India that live that way. It's called a joint family, which basically means your uncles and your aunts and your grandparents and everybody lives together. They're the same pot and we eat together and do everything together, right? Which may sound really fun, but it's only fun for the first 5 days. I guess after that, it's just tensions. So I grew up in that reality. So when you grow up in that reality, you realize that when you start, and that might be the reality of a lot of people that might be listening to this podcast, is why I share the story, is when you start from realities like that, it's very hard to go to your heart or go to your alignment or go to your spirituality or think about other people, because what you are thinking about is mostly how do I survive? It's a survival that pretty much that comes first. And because of that, a lot of times we start to operate from a place of saying, what is it in for me, right? Why should I do this? How do I make money? And money just that's just how the society is structured, and it'll change when it'll change. But as of now, money does command a lot of things, right? Money does command if you'll get to eat that day or drink that day or do whatever that needs to be done that day or not. And because of that, money becomes a critical factor. What happens though is that at some stage, for people who are willing to take the chance and live a more fulfilled life, what will happen is they will realize that money is just a means, it's not the end, right? When you start though, you think that's the end. You think like, okay, I'll have the money and then I'll be happy, I'll be fulfilled, everybody will respect me, blah blah blah, yeah, whatever is your story that has happened because of your background, because of how you grew up, how you were born, and which society you were born. All that will define how much money you think is good money to have any end to your life, or feel like that's where I will be happy. But then there will be a point where you'll realize that no, money is just a means to, it's just a means to the end, and the end is actually greater than the money, right? That by that is that's when you start to lean into ideas like you just mentioned, Kitty. You're starting a podcast by saying, what do I want to create? What is it that I want to impact? And all of a sudden, what happens when that end changes for you, or that end becomes a little bit more, like different, something that is actually true fulfillment, not just I can get on the bottle of wine or whatever that is for you right now. When that end changes, you all of a sudden start to realize that there is something that is greater to you than a paycheck, right? And when that happens, all of a sudden you find almost a new conversation that happens in your mind or heart, whatever you want to call it, probably a different kind of mind, which is somewhere here, where you go, okay, what is it that I really want to create? What is it that gives me real fulfillment? How do I find real joy? How do I find more connection, right? And that's where the dialogue kind of starts to shift. And so new synchronicities, like you said, start to happen in your life. All of a sudden, people show up in your life that were never there. People meet you and all of a sudden go, hey, how can we do things together? Instead of saying, okay, let him pitch it to me. Instead of that, people go, okay, what can we do together? Because all of a sudden they find a new light in you, which is very unexplainable. And I know I'm going a little esoteric here, and which people might go, hold your horses, dude. You are from India. You can talk about this stuff. But this is not scientific enough. But there is actually, and like a lot of things, science can't explain these things yet, but we know when we meet people, sometimes we go, I find an instant connection with this person, right? We have all experienced that, right? And that's mostly when people are a little bit more enlightened. They're more in tune with themselves. They're more in tune with why they do what they do, and that defines kind of how they do what they do. There's a very famous talk by a gentleman called Simon Sinek. He wrote a book called Start With Why. And in that TED talk, he talks about why people love Apple, or love Apple when they started and stuff like that, right? And he explains that because the companies that actually start from a place of why, where they actually communicate why they do what they do, create transformative brands and create great connections and have customers that are for lifetime. Whereas the companies that limit themselves to what they do, that usually those are the companies that decline over a period of time. They might get some initial success, but after a point, they don't really last the test of time, because people don't connect to the what you do. They connect to why you do what you do. Right? And you get more in tune with your why, the more closer you get to your heart.
Absolutely. And do you mind sharing with us because obviously that's such a valid point. Like, can you share that transformation point in your own life? Because obviously you've made that shift, coming from a background where you were sharing a house with 22 people in survival mode. Can you talk me through the transition that you went through?
So this particular transition happened I would say about 3 years ago, where I kind of dropped into a lot more of my heart than just my brain or my mind, as we call it. And it happened because, I mean, like I told you, like my childhood was all about like pretty much, it wasn't that like my parents are amazing individuals. They took care of all the needs that we had as kids. So nothing to really complain there. But at the same point of time, I could see that we were cramped into like places where there was no abundance and everything. So as I grew up, I became, as a person, I knew that I will have to hustle it out in a way. Like I will have to figure out what works, because as much as I have really wonderful parents and really great society around me, they haven't figured out how to make life work, right? Not in the same way that I would like to. So I said, they don't really know that. So I was like, okay, early on, I got into the habit of saying that nobody really knows. Everybody is just doing whatever feels right in that moment. So let's keep trying, right? So very early on, I took like a part-time job, and I started working for student organizations. I started taking different jobs and all that kind of stuff. So I started testing a lot of ideas to really build my life around something that was a little bit more more, which I could make sense of, even if anybody else couldn't. So that's how the journey started. For the first, since 18 to right around 29, I was doing that. Basically, I was building my life. I started with internships. Then I did a job as a salesperson in a media house in India. Then I did some founder work. So I kind of told that company, and this was again one of those radical ideas where I said, okay, what can we do to really figure out life, how to hijack this whole process that people tell me you'll only be wealthy at 50, which means basically I've spent all my life doing just building the wealth. So I was like, okay, what can I do? So I proposed an idea to my company that I was working for, and I started a company with them. And then I dropped out because that company didn't work out and joined this company called Mindvalley as an intern 8 years ago, and started working as an intern, really hustling it out, figuring out okay what needs to happen. And in about 3 to 5 years, about 5 years into the company, I had left the company, started many companies, started companies in partnership with Mindvalley, played all the different roles, and I was at the stage where I was the CEO of the company. Right. Wow. So in about 5-6 years, I'd gone from an intern to CEO of Mindvalley.
Incredible.
Yeah, thank you. But while I was doing CEO, what happened was is that I was married at that time. So I'd recently married, and I was CEO of this company. Beautiful wife, Italian, wonderful life. I mean, nobody should be complaining at that stage of life. And then it hit me that as much as I was in my like how I thought life could be perfect, like I had the perfect house, I had the car I wanted, like it was like I had a beautiful wife, I was having European holidays, I was at like top of my game, I was CEO of this really, really progressive company. Like from the outside, nobody would say anything is wrong with that, right? Like it wouldn't look like, but internally I could feel that my life was like absolutely in the wrong direction, because as much as I had all the things, all the bling, all the watches, cars, everything, I was so like, I felt unfulfilled every day. I felt stressed every day. I felt not good enough every day. And so I was like, I can't be doing, like, I'm trying to push a mission of living a fulfilled life. And I can't be so hypocritical by not working on whatever I need to go through, because there's something that's not working out for sure. I didn't know what it was at that time.
Yeah.
All I knew was it's not working out, whatever it is, right? And that was my point where I said, I need to do something. It wasn't like a moment, because I'm not a moment kind of guy. I like to, if I get a moment, I go, okay, let me just think about that. I don't want to react, because I don't like reaction. I like proactivity. So I'm like, let me think about that. Let that sit in. Even for business ideas, is the same approach that I follow. So that was the idea, and that idea just didn't never go away. It just kept coming back. It's like I feel unfulfilled. Like I'm not sleeping enough. I'm not enjoying my time. I'm basically stressed all the time.
It's almost like your soul comes knocking.
Yeah, it's like, come on, like wake up. Like it's like it just kept pushing me. And there was a time where I just like, it was around the end of the year. It was around this time we had a little break time where I actually had enough time to just think about where my life was going, and I wasn't excited about the year that was going to start. I was just not excited. It was 2016 that was going to start. So it was end of 2015. So it was starting of 2016. So it was 2016 was just about to start, and I was like, I hate 2016 already before even I got into it. All right. So I was just like, it wasn't for me. It didn't feel like it was me. Sorry, it was 2015. Sorry, it was starting of 2015. Sorry about that. I got the wrong year. And I was just like, I was not excited about 2015 at all. And so I was like, okay, I gotta change something. And so I went into the process of really trying to find myself and discover myself. And I took the time, because we had this space, 15, 20 days, where I could really disconnect. I could help my team actually take care of things. I could disconnect. I could work with my co-founder on that as well, who's an amazing man. And once I was done with my process, I realized that the life that I was living is not the life that I wanted. So I had to change things. And I'm a guy of radical action sometimes. So I said, okay, I can't possibly go into this journey while there are 200 people looking at me for what they should do next. It's impossible, right? Wow. It's I would like, because it's 200-person, 220 people company at that time. And we were like, I can't possibly do that because they will be lost. Now I'm throwing everybody into a funk, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, that can't happen. So the first thing I did was I said, okay, my business partner, I sat him down, and He's an amazing guy. So I was like, hey, listen, I can't do this. And I know we committed to a certain number of years, but I'm miserable doing what I'm doing. I'm not doing a good job, or at least I don't feel good, and I don't feel good about it. And he's an amazing, very enlightened man as well. So he was like, okay, let's figure out how to do this. I totally understand if this is what you need to do, it's just to step out. Let's figure out a plan. It's if
Yeah.
you'll do it immediately, it'll be really hard for the company. Can we
Yeah.
phase it out? We came up with a plan which was phased over 5-6 months, so I can transition out of my role. And the new people, which was my co-founder, can transition into the role. So we created that space for that to happen. And then I started, because I was transitioning out, I had a little bit more space. I started to think a little bit more towards what I really want for my life. Where do I want to go? And that was the time when I realized the other big burden that I had, which I was dragging with me, was my relationship at that time. Now, it was nothing as a comment individual. She's an amazing soul. She's a beautiful woman. She's very enlightened, very smart, very an entrepreneur herself. Nothing about her, but it was more about me. It was about me not being fulfilled in that relationship. And from what I was seeing from my perspective, I was trying everything I could possibly. Right. So it was that stage. And so that was the second phase that happened, which had to end at that point, was my relationship. Uh, and so that was the second radical action that I had to take in the coming months, is that I would end that relationship. And all of this was happening, of course, as you go through the process, it's a very painful process.
Yeah.
So I was drinking a lot, I was eating really bad, and I was just like, it
Numbing out.
wasn't that, yeah, I was numbing the pain in many different ways. So it wasn't that, oh, I am like the load's lifted and I am free. That wasn't my state. I was actually more, every time I was taking these actions, I was getting in more and more and more of pain than actually just being relieved of it.
Mm.
And so I would attend events, and I would go to seminars. I would go listen to online events and all that kind of stuff, because all I was trying to do was to find how I can find myself back. Right?
Mm.
It's a friend of mine. Her name's Lisa Nichols. She talks about the hardest journey that you take is usually journey back to self.
Mm.
Uh, so so it was almost that journey that I was taking. I was taking the journey back to myself, trying to find what is it that I truly want, because I could have continued in the direction that I was going. Right? It would make all sense. The world would say I was right if I did that. And it was a shocker for a lot of people. My parents were surprised. They were like, what is wrong with you? Like, if that world, like, you have like a great job at 30, you're a CEO of a really progressive company, a beautiful wife, she's Italian, she's like, everybody craves an Italian. I like, what is up with you, dude?
But it takes
But
incredible courage to do that. It really does. But I think like in my experience, where we don't face the kind of inner knowing or the kind of nagging feeling, then the universe will take corrective action. So, I actually think you totally did the right thing, as difficult as that may be. If you'd have left it, then in my experience, usually the universe catches up with us and kind of shifts us.
yeah, and so yeah, so at that time it was really, really hard, but I just went through with it, because like you were talking about, it's about a little bit about just knowing. You don't have a strategy, really. You can't quantify, you can't check box to say this is right, this is wrong,
No.
or these are numbers against this. But it's just it comes uh, from within. And if it's like, for me, it was repeatedly enough that I had to take action.
Mm.
To be very honest, a lot of times it won't even knock enough times. You would just numb yourself to the situation, and that happens with people as well. Is where they just
Yeah.
numb themselves so much that they don't even know if it's painful anymore.
Mm.
Right? For me, it was knocking enough, and I'm grateful that it was, because I could really transform my life from it. And at that time, while that phase was happening, that was good. I would say, even after I ended my relationship, for the next, I want to say maybe another 8 months or so, I was purely suffering. Like, it was just suffering after suffering. I was doing the events. I was the rock star, doing all the kind of stuff, like, doing videos, and you will see me, and it'll seem like everything's good. But every night it was like clockwork. It was drinking. It was alone time. It was feeling lonely, not good enough, etc., etc. I bring myself into work so I don't I don't have to deal with this. All those kind of things that might be markers in many people's life, but they don't see it. Like there's so many people who just overwork just so that they don't have to deal with that, their life really. All right. So that was pretty much what I was doing. But I was also at the same point of time reading really aggressively, going wherever I could go, trying to listen in, trying to not feel guilty to do things that I was doing. Because remember, this is the same company I'm co-founder of, and I just quit a job, which is the most important job.
Yeah.
Before the time I had committed. So first, it seems like, oh, it's just a job. It's not. It's like it's something that I've committed my time to. It's like taking back a step back from your commitment, your greatest commitment, which usually is people's work. That's like your message. That's sometimes is like a thing that you are holding on to, and I was holding on to. It was a very big thing that I felt like I had let down my business partner, and I had let down my team members because I just quit on them in a way. And same for marriage. It was something like it wasn't only painful in context of my wife, my ex-wife, but it wasn't painful in the context of my parents, because they are Indian, good, decent Indian family who believe in you marry your love, and that's the only person you ever date and the only person you ever marry. And for them, it was really hard and painful. So I was like, at that stage as a human being, I was just feeling like I've let everybody down. So like, like the whole downward spiral of that, like I've let everybody down. I'm not good enough. I would never find love again. How will I build a business again? All that kind of stuff that just shows up because you've taken some really hard decisions. So all of that continued to happen 6 to 8 months. I was trying to recover from it. And so my inflection point was basically those two big segments that I had to do that changed me as a person, because I think I've taken a lot of hard decisions in life, but I think those two were the hardest that I've taken till date, at least, is the toughest decisions that I've made till date. And then slowly, as I was starting to discover myself again. Again, I can't really say there was one point where I found myself, because I feel like I'm still finding myself.
Sure.
I don't think that I'm like there yet, and I don't think I'll ever be there yet, because it's like that ongoing journey,
lifelong journey,
discovering something new. Yeah. You're always discovering something new about yourself. You're always being challenged, and if that won't be, you won't enjoy life, I think. So I'm not like challenged about that, but I don't want to say, oh, I found myself now, because I think I'll always be finding a new version of myself all the time.
And I know this conversation is going to be so helpful for people listening. I know there's going to be people out there who possibly, they're going through that transition that you have gone through. What, benefit of hindsight, you've gone through that huge transition, to quit, to quit the CEO of Mindvalley, and then your your wife, that, incredible decision to take. What advice would you have for somebody listening who, they know inside that the life they're building isn't the right life for them? What advice would you have for them if they're listening?
So it will be hard for you to believe, as I say it, as a listener, whoever's listening to, if they are feeling this right now, but know that it'll be okay. That's the one thing that if I would have known, I would have suffered less pain, and I could have made the decision much more easier. That it'll be okay, that you'll be okay. What we tend to do as human beings is we make up stories that are not true. Or at least it was my scenario. So I can say from experience that I was creating stories because I felt like if I don't do this job, for example, I wouldn't have money, because I associated that with everything that I am, right? Because that's my work. I mean, how am I going to pay the bills, right? Even if like co-founder gets dividends, but salary is gone as soon as you're like, okay, I'm not doing any of this stuff. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, so I don't have recognition, because there was recognition attached to that role too. It's like, okay, you matter because you're CEO of this big company, right? So what happens, like that fear would come up for anybody who's willing, is right now that the message is knocking at your door, and you're going, I don't want to listen because this message is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. My logical brain says, if I quit this job, I'm not going to get one. If I quit this job, I won't be able to pay the bills. If I do this, this will happen. Blah blah blah. Whatever is the story that you are creating from your logical mind versus what the truth is. And same might be for your relationship. Oh, I won't find love again. I am too old to find love now. I am too big to find love. Whatever is the story, there's like a trillion stories that our mind will come up with to justify that you shouldn't change, because we feel change means pain, whereas change actually means evolution. So if we can reframe that dialogue, and if we can remember that before we found that person, before we found the job, we were okay. So when we will leave that job or leave the person, we'll be okay. We're all smart human beings. We can figure out life. Doing life is, if we make it more complicated than it is, we really make it more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
And yes, there will be work, but then hello, it's work right now too, right?
Yeah.
So yes, when you quit the job, you'll have to work out a plan that can take care of your finances, but it's not any less work right now. You're just unhappy also doing the work, right? So you're doing the work and then you're unhappy with it. So why not at least change one dialogue, then do the work and be happy with it, right? So we can switch that around. We can try, right? I never suggest anyone to say, all right, if you feel like, just quit your job. I'm not a believer of that. I don't say burn your bridges or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that's like a understanding that I'm not saying quit today, but if it's not fixable, don't attach yourself so tightly and cling on to it so tightly that you can't even let go and you're drowning as it drowns. You won't be getting success in your job if you're not happy. I mean, that's just, I've hired enough people to know. That the people who are not happy doing what they do, they either get fired or they quit really fast because they don't get a promotion.
And you mentioned something earlier, which I thought was really important, was about space, taking space, because when we're in something, it's difficult to see necessarily how we need to go forward. And you mentioned about you stepped out to give yourself space to really see what it was you wanted.
Yeah. And it came through, I mean, my space was accidental, but now I created deliberately to be able to really be able to think my life. Like recently I was failing this particular challenge, which was coming up for me often, which was a block for me. It still is, and not that I've resolved it, but I was like, listen, I sent a message to my team, my team that I work with, saying, hey, for the next 4 days, I'm not available because I need some space. And as you create these spaces, what happens is that you get the time to, and space doesn't mean just go out and party for those 4 days. Space actually means you go out and explore who you are. And you do that with the help of mentors, coaches, educators, retreat centers, whatever that is for you. You find what that is for me. For me, it's books, for example. It's a lot of books. There's a lot of training programs. Like if I had my iPad handy, you would see like there's at any given time I'm reading 4 books and 3 programs that I'm enrolled in. And then there's an event that I'm going to. And it may sound like, oh, you're a junkie. I'm not. That's basically how you create a transformative life, is by learning off the collective. And the collective can only be learned if you participate in the collective. By collective, I mean humanity. Right? We are one collection. My experience is different than Kitty's experience. And Kitty's experience can teach me a lot. If I only give a chance to Kitty to actually tell me what her experience was. Right? Yeah. But if I can have that knowledge from Kitty, I don't have to go through the experience. Or even if I'm going through the experience, at least it becomes easy, And that's exactly what I wanted to show through these interviews, by you sharing your life experience. And thank you for being so beautifully open and authentic and honest. I can just feel it pouring out of you. It's really beautiful. I know that people listening will get real value from this conversation, by you kind of really sharing what you've been through. I know it's going to help loads of people listening. So thank you. It's really wonderful. Thank you. Glad I can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to Kitty Talks. Be sure to head over to our kittytalks.com website and become a member of our exclusive club, and you'll get free interviews and access to our private Facebook group, exclusive webinars and secret success interviews. See you there.